Welcome to the Live, Work, Play Maine podcast, where we bridge the divide between marketing and economic development, with your host, Hillary Dow.
Hello, and welcome to the Live, Work, Play Maine podcast. I'm Hillary Dow, and I am absolutely thrilled to have my guest today be John Lee Dumas, who is the owner of EntrepreneurOnFire. And I had attended the Agents of Change conference last fall, and it was in John's session on podcasting that I was struck with my business idea, and my life changed from that moment forward. So I had someone ask me recently who would be my ultimate interview, and I said, well, as a matter of fact, it's John Dumas, and he's scheduled for later this month. So I'm just thrilled. So here's a little bit more info on John for those of you who aren't familiar with him. He's the founder and host of EntrepreneurOnFire, a top-ranked podcast named Best in iTunes 2013. John interviews today's most inspiring and successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week, has been featured in both Time and Inc. magazine, and is the founder of Podcasters Paradise, a community where podcasters can create, grow, and monetize their podcast. EntrepreneurOnFire generates over 450,000 unique downloads a month, with past guests such as Seth Godin, Tim Ferriss, Barbara Corcoran, Gary Vaynerchuk, and Guy Kawasaki. Recaps of the over 500 episodes and much more can be found at eofire.com. So welcome, John. I am thrilled to have you today.
Hillary, you nailed Gary Vaynerchuk's last name. I need to commend you for that because so few people do.
Thank you. Alrighty, so how about if we start with you telling us a little bit about EntrepreneurOnFire?
I'd love to. So you shared a great little intro for me, but what EntrepreneurOnFire is, in a nutshell, is a 7-day-a-week business podcast where I do interview those inspiring and successful entrepreneurs. And we really focus on their story, Hillary, their journey. So we talk about a failure and the lessons they learned from that failure. We talk about an aha moment, a light bulb that they had at some point in their journey. Like, we talked about with you during the Agents of Change conference in Maine, and the steps that they took to turn that idea, that aha moment, into success. And then we talk about what's really working and has them fired up right now today. And then we enter the lightning round, which is a great 5-question kind of quick format where we share tips, tools, tactics, resources, pretty much a curveball of a $500 question that throws a lot of my guests for a loop. And then, of course, we just end with one parting piece of guidance. So that's EntrepreneurOnFire in a nutshell. And it's something that I eat, live, and breathe. I'm very passionate about it. And I love sharing the story.
Awesome. So I know that I've visited your website many times, so I know about your history and what brought you to start EntrepreneurOnFire. But can you share with us a time in your life that you felt stuck? I'm assuming it's probably before EntrepreneurOnFire began, and how you maybe felt disengaged and what kind of brought you to take that step.
Yeah, it's a great question, Hillary, because being stuck is something that I actually still deal with on a weekly basis. I mean, small business owners, entrepreneurs, that feeling of hitting a wall or, having to venture into that new unknown space is ever present. So I'm always looking for ways, even today, to get unstuck. But as you did mention at the same time with EntrepreneurOnFire, this is something that I'm so passionate about. So I welcome those opportunities of getting stuck because I love the challenge of getting unstuck. But for me, prior to EntrepreneurOnFire, man, it was a tough journey because I had my aha moment at the age of 32. So I spent, really the 10 years, a full decade from graduation, 22 years old in Providence College, Rhode Island, all the way up through being 32 years old in this decade of being stuck, of not knowing what I wanted to do, not having a passion, not being inspired by work that I was doing or what I was bringing to the world or what I was bringing, from within myself. And it was a challenge for me, Hillary, because I knew that I wanted to wake up, on fire every day and do something that I enjoyed and was passionate about, but it just wasn't possible. I mean, it was not possible for me to find that passion because I tried. I went down all these different paths and, these different rabbit holes. I went to law school, corporate finance, commercial real estate, internet startups. So I was an officer in the Army for 8 years. All of these different things I was trying, to get unstuck and to find that passion, and none of it was working. I know a lot of people that are watching this today feel that very way. And I felt that way for a decade. So, I really want to just share, this is part of the journey. It's not going to be like this, snap moment where you just know exactly what you're going to do. For me, I wish I was born, with a microphone in hand and the Entrepreneur on Fire, mic flag here, but I wasn't. It was a long journey with a lot of failure, a lot of fear. The imposter syndrome was ever present with me, that feeling that I wasn't good enough, like who'd want to listen to my show. I mean, Hillary, I know that you're going through the same thing as every entrepreneur goes through. Why should I create, this podcast, this video, this book, this blog post, this, whatever that might be, course, tutorial, service, who's going to want it? It's that, always doubting ourselves. And so the one thing I kind of want to close like this section with, because it's so powerful for me, and I think that if any listener takes these steps to do, like they'll start to get unstuck, and that's to surround yourself with like-minded entrepreneurs, to really make sure that you are always, being impacted in a positive way by those you're spending the most time with. Jim Rohn says, we're the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So I challenge everybody watching this to think about the 5 people that you're spending time with right now. And are those the type of people that are, impacting your lives in a positive way? Or are there some people in there that are kind of dragging you down? Hillary does great things like going to conferences like Agents of Change in Maine that we're going to be seeing each other again at this coming September in Maine, in Portland, Maine, on September, I think it's 26th. She's going there. She's surrounding herself by other entrepreneurs who are doing things. And she had her inspirational moment at a conference. I had my inspirational moment at a conference. And now I continue to have those moments by surrounding myself with, mastermind people that, really inspire me. So we all get stuck, Hillary. We all do. And it's a difficult journey with a lot of ups and downs and a lot of roller coasters. But if there's any key takeaway here, surround yourself by like-minded individuals.
Okay, I will certainly take that advice.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's get a little bit more into something you just touched on briefly, that you have a consistent message that you can't be afraid to fail, right? And I'm a fan of fail fast, fail frequently, fail often. So when you first started your own business, and ever since then, I'm gathering that failure happens. So what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned, that whether you're a brand new entrepreneur or someone that's been working in your business for a while, that were your biggest failure lessons?
I have so many failures, Hillary. I think that they're so important. And that's why I start every Entrepreneur on Fire interview by, engaging my guests with that question. Share with me a failure. Hillary, tell me a time that you fell flat on your face. Like, I want to hear that story because there's so many lessons to be learned from that. And failure is just part of the journey. It's part of the life. And for me, one of my biggest failures, goes all the way back to launching Entrepreneur on Fire. I mean, I was ready to go, Hillary. I had all the interviews prepped. My website was ready to go. Then I woke up the day it was supposed to be going live, the day that all I had to do was click submit. And I was terrified and I didn't launch. I was like, the imposter syndrome is taking over. It is just there telling me, John, nobody's going to want to listen to your podcast. So don't launch this out to the world. It's not going to inspire anybody. You're not going to make a difference. And this voice in my head was really keeping me down. Luckily, I was surrounding myself with people that were able to bash that voice in my head and say, John, this is exactly what's happening. You're doubting yourself. Get it out there. It will impact people. And so even though I delayed my launch because of that fear of failure and because of that, failure in general to launch, when I did launch Entrepreneur on Fire, within 3 weeks, Hillary, I started receiving emails, from lives that it was changing, from lives that it was impacting. And not because I was a great podcast host, because I wasn't. I was very inexperienced. I had no experience, but I was bringing the format in a free, consumable manner, and I was bringing on great guests that shared great stories, and that allowed me to start going down that road.
Yeah. Oh, this is so great. Alrighty, so and I've read this book. The podcast launch book that you have on Amazon is ranked #1 for books on podcasting, which is fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I've gotten the question from people, what's a podcast? So can you share with us a little bit about the value of the podcast platform and how it brings value to the marketing mix for a business?
So I had the same questions just a couple of years ago. I remember complaining to one of my friends saying, I drive to work every day. I hate the radio. Like this, the same Miley Cyrus song is playing every 5 minutes. There's 12 minutes of commercials. Talk radio is no better. And she goes, well, why don't you download some podcasts? And I said, pod who? Like, what is this? And she's like, oh yeah, this is iTunes, and you can, find a host. If it's all free, you can consume it when you want to. You can press play, press pause, and there's a lot of great stuff in every single different niche, industry, topic, you name it. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know this world existed. So I just became an avid podcast listener. And so, for people that are maybe listening now, I'm sure a lot of them potentially know what a podcast is because they found your show, but it's really just an online radio show where you, Hillary, are the host of your show now. And where I'm the host of Entrepreneur on Fire. And, I control the content. I control, if I bring sponsors on, if I, what topics and what format and what flow that we talk about. My show's about the entrepreneurial journey. Other people have shows on sports, on fishing, on hiking, on fashion. And that is amazing. They're building audiences around that. Because to answer, your kind of final question in that, like, what is podcasting as a medium for your business? It's just that. It allows you to build an audience around a topic that you're inspired by. I'm inspired by the entrepreneurial journey. So I've been able to build an audience that I lovingly refer to as Fire Nation, who's really inspired by the entrepreneurial journey as well. And I've been able to build that audience. I've seen other people, build an audience around fly fishing, around hiking, around traveling, and they can then serve that audience. And it's just a really powerful way to build credibility and authority in a niche that you're inspired by. And that's what podcasting has done for me.
Okay. Fantastic. So that's one component of your marketing mix. And it sounds like you really focus that effort on building the audience, which you're hugely successful at that. So kudos.
Thank you.
So what has been another successful marketing strategy that you've employed for Entrepreneur on Fire?
So a really powerful strategy that we use is continuing to produce content in other formats. So we do have this daily podcast, which can be consumed in the audio form from a smartphone, from a computer, from a tablet, from an iPod, you name it, it can be consumed in that audio format. But we also have a headquarters, EntrepreneurOnFire.com. And, I have a team now. One of the people on my team is actually my girlfriend, Kate. She lives, we live here together in San Diego, and she's kind of the content creator side for the different blog articles. So now not only are we producing audio content for, Fire Nation, but they can come and get that same kind of quality and content in a written format, via blog posts and social media, using Facebook and Twitter, to share this message, this, entrepreneurial journey with the world.
Okay, so I take that to mean diversify the different media that you're putting out there, even if it is all similar messaging.
Yeah, so one phrase I would use for that, and I think that this will really kind of slam it home for the listeners, is multicasting. And what that basically means, if you start at the top, you create a video interview just like this. You would take this video interview, Hillary, you'd put it on YouTube, on iTunes, and the different channels. But then you would also detach just the audio from that, and you would submit it separately to iTunes as a separate audio feed. And the reason why you would do that, because it would be, about 1/20th the size. And for people that have, on their smartphones or on their tablets, very limited space, they can still consume that audio in a very powerful way. And then you take that content and you write a summation, a blog post about it. Maybe you have it transcribed and you publish that on your website. So now you have, one piece of content that you've created, Hillary, now repurposed across multiple channels.
Yeah. And I'll give you a plug for your webinars or Podcasters Paradise, that the different tips and tricks of how to implement all of these strategies. The amount of information that you share and provide and have learned and are passing on to all of us is greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Hillary.
Yeah. So let's see. Now, you mentioned that in every single one of your interviews, and I know that those that I've listened to, I love hearing the aha moments that entrepreneurs are sharing. So have there been any favorites? I'm sure a lot are favorites.
So one of my favorite interviews that I've ever had was episode 400. So about 130 episodes ago, from when we're recording this, it was by Sally Hogshead. And this woman is just an incredibly inspiring entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, doing incredible things. And really every answer to the questions that I was posing her, she was just nailing. And, her aha moment was so inspiring. She was sharing, the fact that she's like, listen, my older brother, is like a doctor with 3 PhDs. My older sister, won gold medals at the 1988 Olympics in swimming. She's like, I was always chasing after, the success that they were having. But then when I realized, I just need to be Sally. I need to be me. I need to do what inspires me, Sally Hogshead. That's when she started finally seeing success. That was her light bulb moment where she turned the spotlight, away. When she turned the spotlight that was on other people, her siblings and their success, onto herself and looked within, she started having the phenomenal success, with books, with speaking, with inspiring others.
Fantastic. You live such an exciting life.
Thanks, Hillary.
So my last question of every show, and you are now on the West Coast, but originally from Maine, which
Maine.
Maybe had a little bit to do with the fact that when I attended your session that day, it really hit home because I thought, he's a fellow Mainer. I
Yes.
could do this. So what is your favorite thing about living, working, or playing in Maine?
So Maine, to me, will always be the way life should be. That's our motto of our states. And I've always loved just the diversity that Maine has with the seasons, with, the really hot, intense summers that we spend on the lakes and the very freezing cold winters that I spend up at Sugarloaf, skiing and snowboarding. I mean, the state just has so much to offer in so many different ways that, I loved the 2 years that I just very recently, from 2011 to 2013, lived in the Old Port, right downtown, right off of Commercial Street. Loved just being in that environment, being in that area, and engaging with people, Hillary, like yourself, that are from Maine, that live in Maine, that are proud of, what we've, what we've created, as a state, despite all the challenges we have, because we have a lot of challenges in the state of Maine that, other states don't really have to deal with as much. Frost heaves is like one of 1,000. There's people are always like, why are your roads so bad out there in Maine? I'm like, well, because I'm not in San Diego where it rains twice a year. We have frost buckles, 50 times a month. And, these poor people that have to pave these roads. I mean, that's a whole nother story. But I just love the community. For me, Maine taught me the power of building a community, of serving that community with value. My family still lives in Maine. My sister is raising a family, right in the Back Bay. It's just a gorgeous state, but it's a state, Hillary, that really fosters that family atmosphere. And because I've taken that and applied it to Entrepreneur on Fire, it's allowed me to grow communities like Fire Nation, like Fire Nation Elite, like Podcasters Paradise, with that sense of community that I think a lot of people strive for but aren't finding because the other leaders out there in the entrepreneurial world haven't quite seen the value in really providing that community. But, I saw it day one because of where I come from, because of Maine.
Fantastic. Well, John, thank you so much. I want to encourage all of my listeners to check out John's podcast, visit EntrepreneurOnFire.com, leave comments, consume all his content. He does a fantastic job interviewing tremendously powerful individuals that I just have so much experience to share. So thank you so much for being a guest on my show. I am truly honored, and I look forward to seeing you this fall, if not sooner, at those conferences that are so key for all of us. Thank you so much.
Hillary, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.